I don't have to remember everything I want to do. I can set up a system which will help me remember what I was going to do.
The AI Advantage.
Welcome to the Evolvepreneur AI Advantage Show, and I'm your host, Richard Wray. My mission is to help entrepreneurs use AI to their advantage. Join me today where we dig deep with our guest and get you the best concepts and strategies. Today's special guest is Kathryn Carter. Kathryn is a driving force behind Cottage Science Consulting, blending love of all things science with a dash of creativity to help small businesses and NGOs with innovative solutions. Today we're talking about small-scale AI, big impact. Kathryn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard.
Kathryn, really great to have you here as ever. But as I ask all my guests, Kathryn, where in the world are you?
I am in Canberra. And for those of you who don't know, that's the capital of Australia.
Yes, a lot of people get confused that they think maybe Sydney or Melbourne is, but no, it is actually, it's Canberra, and a very interesting yet cold place it is at times. I mean,
sunny right now, Richard.
This is good news, good news. That is good news. Well, Kathryn, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Okay, so recently someone used the word versatilist, and I loved it. I'm a very versatile person.
Yeah.
I have had careers in science, in education writing, in running holiday camps, in doing policy work, kind of following my breeze. And as a mother of children who have found themselves unable to attend school, I fell into consulting and running my own business, as so many people do. And I have discovered that my underlying drive in life is I love solving problems for other people. Like, that's just what I love doing. So one of the exciting things that Cottage Science Consulting is getting into is helping small companies, really startups, NGOs, have the systems and tools and policies to allow them to grow, kind of to create jobs, and to have that real creative, because I can do writing, I can do design, I can do science, I can do evaluation, kind of that cross use of skills, which is so important when you've only got a small budget and a small team.
So that leads to the question then of how are you using AI?
Okay, I use it personally and I use it to help businesses. So one of my favorite quotes about AI is it was looking for a use case scenario. It was a tool that was going to work it out. And I will admit I ignored it for like a year because I'm a writer and an illustrator and really good at analytics. So I just didn't see the point, right?
So was that you ignored it fingers in ears, or you just didn't see it as
I just didn't see
something
it
useful
to me? Like, I could see that other people were finding it useful. I could see what they were doing, and I was like, yeah, but I can already.
You're right. You can do this. You don't need it.
No, I can write better than it. I'm really good at analysis, so I don't need it to make research papers. Like, I just didn't see the point. And then I went to a conference, and one of the speakers mentioned using AI to create chatbots for students to enable them to practice having difficult conversations with people of very fundamentally different backgrounds.
Oh,
and I was like, that is interesting. So that, piqued my interest. So that, at the time I was writing a book trying to teach science outcomes, but focus most of the classroom learning on interpersonal skills, social skills, and ethical understanding. And understanding that while there's science in a problem, there's also people's beliefs and values and how to bring that together. And I was
struggling. Give me an example of that. Give me a little example.
Okay. What we were working on was cat ownership in Australia. So I was tying it into the understanding of food chains and how cats affect the natural environment. So you hit your science outcomes. But then whether or not someone should be allowed to adopt a cat intersects with your beliefs on individual freedom versus environmental freedom. So we had this case of a woman who gets a cat to help with her kids and their feelings of empathy and enjoyment and all the positive sides.
So far, so good.
And then the guy next to her who has a really strong reaction to that because he knows the cats can end up in his garden. He loves native wildlife. He's been allergic to cats. So you can see these two sides. And we encourage the kids to work out where they stand on the issue and how to have discussions with people who don't agree and what the science is and what is the law is and then what ethics are within that. So it's really interesting. And one of the problems I was coming up against was how do we help them realize the diversity of opinions without asking 10-year-olds to be fundamentally different to their peers? Mm-hmm. That's a very problematic situation to put kids into. And then here we go, chat. And so I'm still getting to the point where I'm actually going to be able to implement that probably, but that was my first user case that I got excited to.
But so let me just ask a few questions on that then. So the whole point here on that particular topic and creating a chatbot for this as well is there's that whole concept of nuance, which so many people seem to have lost and actually taken on somebody else's opinion to try and maybe modify their own behavior.
Yes.
And that's the general direction, yeah? The
idea is you have the discussion with someone who has different views, and at the end, it helps you rate your ability to actively listen to someone whose views are different to yourselves. And for me, that's something that I find in our modern society, we tend to get very siloed. So especially with your choice, the choices you can make, you can choose to live a life without friction. You can choose to live a life where you only interact with people whose views are the same as yours. And so a lot
of no fun.
No, I don't choose that. But it's trying to get away from the if you're not with us, you're against it, and more into those nuanced discussions. And I was excited to think about a safe space because it is less stressful if it's not a person you're talking to practice having difficult conversations with that would provide you with an idea of if you are in fact listening. So the purpose is not to convince them they're not a real person, but to see how you yourself react and have these conversations.
So the concept being that it's highly unlikely that you're going to change somebody's opinion on the spot.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work like that, does it?
No, it doesn't.
No matter how strong your argument might be.
Yes.
Well, that sounds very exciting. So keep going on. Tell us more about... Yeah.
Sorry. So there's that. And then I work with a business who does easy read, accessible writing. And the business owner came to me and said, look, the problem is it's expensive to write accessible communication because it's very difficult. People think it's simple because it's very short, but it's the opposite. The less you write, the more work goes into it. And she said, look, my problem is I want everyone to have accessible writing and they can't afford our services. I'm looking into how can we use AI to make it cheaper so that there's more accessible information. And there I was like, I can see the use case there. It's a very tricky skill, but it's a service that people need. So I was like, okay, I love that. And I said to her, well, if you're going to do that, you're going to need an ethical standpoint on AI. Mm-hmm. And she said, fantastic, write it for me. So,
okay.
In that grand old tradition of put your hand up and get it back. And I said, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I then did one of my deep dives and looked at everything, prompt engineering, ethics, bias. I did courses with online MOOCs and then went into a small scale with a person. So right down to the end of it, wrote a thing and suddenly discovered AI can lift mental load for women, for people with cognitive disabilities, and then that got me really excited.
So when you say mental load, let's just dive into that a little bit because that's a very interesting term to use. Okay,
so for me, I first came across it when out of the feminist movement, there was a French illustrator who wrote about the mental load of running a house, and her cartoon's called "You Should Have Asked," and so it's about how
that's a loaded statement.
Yes, so it's just like I asked you to do. I shouldn't need to ask. As your partner, you should be able to notice what needs to be done without me telling you. You should be, And so it's that idea that the women carry that mental load. They're keeping a lot of things in their mind and doing a lot of we acknowledge that management is a skill, but the management of a house is actually very brain consuming. Other than, yes, you can tell people to do the task, but you need to see the task the right person, check it's done. So all of that, it's
really
physical load. Yeah. And look, I'm not saying that there aren't couples for whom this doesn't exist. I'm just saying for a lot of us, implicitly, we still carry a lot of that. We're supposed to remember birthdays. We're supposed to remember, just, this has got the mental load. And so the use case that I found fascinating was, she said she no longer has to do meal budgeting because she could put into ChatGPT and say, I have this budget. I need to feed this many people. And it could predict within 10 cents or whatever, she could create an Aldi shopping list. So it just saved her so much effort and time. It could take into account local produce, time of season, all the things that you're trying to balance, and just, instead of spending, and it's not even just the time, you don't have to think about it all the time and then only get around to writing a shopping list. You're not constantly scanning to see if there are sales, that you delegated a task and it's going to take you 30 seconds once a week for something that used to occupy this space in your brain. And so suddenly you do that and that brain space is lifted. And that's what I've been very interested in is, yes, people talk about time saving. I'm thinking about brain saving. What is it going to do for me that allows me to free up all of these subroutines I've got going on in my brain? Oh, I must remember to follow up with that person or that kind of thing.
That is very interesting. So, you've got the whole concept really of your brain's only got so much juice in it. And this is death by 1,000 cuts if you're not careful. And if you can take away so many of those, you can start to really delve into the science side of this and get into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But the reality is, you're just exhausted because you've got so much on your plate. And if you can just nibble away at little things here and there, but make that easy, then you can actually get better results.
Absolutely. And so I've just having personally experienced that uplift of things you didn't know you were worrying about. And so recently I created this fabulous line of automation for myself. It's like having a personal assistant that doesn't judge. But I often find myself thinking deep thoughts at really inappropriate times. For example, driving.
Okay.
Driving on a straight highway. My mind is focused. I've got nothing else. I've got no one bombarding me with questions, no visuals on all the tasks I've yet to do. And suddenly my brain goes, oh, here, I've got this thought about this. You mentioned having, I'm autistic ADHD. My brain has short-term memory issues. If I want to remember, I've thought about it. I have to keep reminding myself of it. And I get this implicit panic. I've had this great idea. I don't want to lose it, but I can't action it. And so now I have a little thing where I just press, I've got voice activated.
Mm-hmm.
I say
if you're driving, of course.
This is what I'm driving.
Yes.
Voice activated, I say it out loud. And then the magic happens. And when I get home, I have a little thing where it said, you mentioned you were talking about this. And so it sits there, it analyzes my audio, which is pretty patchy because I'm driving.
Yeah.
I don't spend a lot of extra effort that I would if I was talking to a person in terms of clarifying my thoughts, over explaining. I don't worry if I repeat myself or I don't finish my sentences. I just say what's on my mind, this thought, and it analyzes it for me. And then it sends me a little message saying, hey, don't forget you're doing this. And here are 3 things you might want to think about doing. Here's and I've got that at a table. And then periodically I have an automation that goes to that table and go, hey, remember 3 months ago you had this idea and have you actioned it yet? So it's like,
look, thank you for sharing that whole concept. Being neurodivergent, ADHD, as I always say, if anybody brings it up, I have been diagnosed with ADHD myself. And I think some of the things that you're saying there absolutely tally with me. What tool is it you're using? Because that sounds like an amazing setup that you've got.
Okay, So for that setup, I tried a bunch of different tools. I'm still on my exploratory journey, and funnily enough, I ended up back on Zapier because it has the most integrations. And what I really wanted was something that was going to trigger automatically. And the best way to trigger it, I kept playing with how to get that audio to be transcribed. So that was the sticking point for me, was finding a thing that could automate. And so I tried Respell. That's much better for using different AI integrated models, so it can use Claude 2 and everything. But with Zapier, if an audio file uploads to a folder, it will transcribe it and then analyze it. Within Zapier, I'm just using ChatGPT-3 because I don't earn a lot of money right now. It all goes back into the business. So I didn't want to have to pay for API integrations. So I just used ChatGPT-3 in that case. And that was good enough for what I needed.
I mean, people keep going, oh, no, we must have the latest version of whatever. But in actual fact, there's a lot of great stuff out there that is free.
And then my problem was it needed to go to Dropbox because that was, I needed to trigger into appropriate folder. But the app I was using for the record saved into, I'm an Apple Mac user, don't judge me. It was on iCloud. That doesn't have integrations. But I actually do subscribe to ChatGPT-4. I asked ChatGPT-4, how do I create an automation to do it? And it walked me through the Python programming. And so that's why it's all automated.
That is especially interesting because it actually wrote the code or helped you write the code.
Yeah. And every time I went wrong, I could tell it what was going wrong. And it would tell me how to, it was like having, someone over my shoulder. Say, try this out. And I tried it and I'm like, it's saying this. And then I go, oh, well, maybe you should try this code. Or, oh, in order to debug that, let's find out what's going on. So type this in. And I am programming adjacent. My parents were among the first programming. My sister is a programmer. I think my teenage rebellion was not to be a programmer.
You can't fight nature. It was going to get you sooner or later, yeah?
The fabulous thing is I'm aware enough that I can see what's happening. But it's helping with the bit I never learned, which was the actual code. So, yes, it now all works and it's spectacular. And I was so excited to see that I could have this thought to action made that much easier through having the... So that's my personal exploration with AI. The last thing I used to do it is to validate my kids' storytelling. My kids are highly imaginative. They have these fabulous co-created stories of imagination and it's beautiful. And I help them create little videos and I use the AI to generate images to go with it because they are, 8 and 10. And it just adds interest and you should see the pride that they have when they see it looking which is interesting, of course. I'm an illustrator. It's not that I want to replace people's jobs, but in this case, there's literally no one I could pay, which is not a paid job, to do this. So they can see their story come to life, but they are also learning it with me about the pitfalls, about how hard it is to get us to do certain things. So they're learning a little bit of the management side of things and, seeing the pros and cons, if you will. And I've taken that across into the work side of things. So I'm helping with a very early project called, what's it called again? Easy Life Skills for Every Year. So that's coming out of the disability sphere, talking about how it's hard. A lot of the information about life skills and careers aren't necessarily adapted to people with learning difficulties. Also that they are less likely to have the kind of relationships which will give them the information they need. So we're trying to create a trusted space with resources written in easy read about people who really get what you mean by I don't understand. There's a great meme. How do you fold in cheese? You fold it in. Like that not understanding the...
You just do it.
Yeah, you just do it. What do you mean, how do you fold in cheese? Like, no, I just literally need you to tell me.
How do I do this? I have never folded cheese before. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to be thought an idiot for asking that question.
Now, this just want to just pausing you there for a second then. So
Yes.
going back to the learning side of it and neurodivergence and all this stuff that goes with it, I was discussing this with somebody recently, and the whole concept of, a fish doesn't understand why you can't breathe underwater.
Yes, absolutely.
People who don't have some of these challenges just do not understand because they don't have those challenges. It's that simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we're doing is, I'm like, not anyone. Sorry, I'm looking at the time. Oh dear.
We've got plenty of time. Keep
good.
It's not
Good. All right. So you can see a market gap, which is these resources need to exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can say, I know what we'll do. We'll get a group of expert writers in. We will write them for them. We will ask the group once if it's good for them, and then we'll publish. And we're doing the opposite. We're saying, right, here you go, 18 to 25-year-olds, you're going to write the resources, and we're going to use our knowledge to help you. But it's going to come from you, and I'm going to use this as a learning opportunity for you to learn about how to be a content creator, how to consult with your own group. So it's kind of flipping the narrative of people with learning disabilities to be seen as purely consumers or people you do things for, to being creators of their own content. Now, this project is in its infancy, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of funding yet. We need a proof of concept. We need to build the community. What am I using AI for? At the moment, to generate some illustrations, because the person I have on board is a writer.
We don't have an illustrator.
We do not yet have an illustrator. We will. But at the moment, on a sniff of an oily rag, where we are creating a proof of concept. What I'm hoping is we can therefore create what I believe is called a pitch deck. People will be able to see what we're doing, and then we can get an illustrator, because an illustrator is going to do better in terms of continuity of drawings. Like, I've been experimenting a lot, obviously, through working with my kids. I've got a use case to experiment with images. It's not, there are good things. It helps that I can actually, because I've got all the tools, it's a bit like with the writers, I think. It gives me something and I can fix it. Yeah. And sometimes it's questionable as to whether it's faster or not. But the point here is, once we get the illustrator on board, we probably won't need it as much, or we'll use it for brainstorming.
So I think you've just said something very, very important. You are using AI to prototype. You're using it to brainstorm, but you're not using it to replace people. You are still looking to keep those human skills, keep that uniqueness in there, which is something that, I think everybody needs to at least keep in the back of their mind when they're using it.
Absolutely. I want to see where AI can help people. One of my worst, when I go to AI promotional events, people are like, oh, it's great because I don't have to hire junior staff. And I was like, yeah, that's great. But the junior staff will learn by being around people who know. And if they no longer have those entry-level jobs, how are we, as you can replace a paralegal eventually with AI, but paralegal was how people were around lawyers long enough to, it's that kind of bringing together training. So I've been, in my work, have been trying to look at, okay, it's here and it's happening. So that's okay. Like, that's just a thing. Mm-hmm. People change. So how do I help young people be around content creators? That's where Elsie's come from. I've got this super duper plan for co-working spaces that integrate people who have children at home, being one of them, and young adults, and how we work together. But yeah, AI, how can we use it to also then create jobs, not necessarily by being AI spruikers. Not that that's a bad thing, that's a great thing, but not everyone can have a job teaching AI.
Welcome to the AI Advantage show.
But yeah, like you said, how can we use it to, I loved someone else mentioning demystifying processes like pitches, or practicing interview questions.
So
to help me write my questions for your podcast.
So
no idea what you're looking for.
The sort of thing I'm hearing here then is, or sort of the strong themes I'm hearing certainly are, if there's one thing that just jumps out at me a little bit, it's the non-judgmental side of AI. You're actually asking and trying things out where, certainly ADHD is one of those neurodivergences where people say things without even realizing they might upset people. I may have encountered this in the past myself, once or twice, and to be able to say it and practice, but with every single facet of what you're talking about there sounds very interesting indeed. I mean, is this the sort of the tone that you're getting?
Yeah, I joke when I'm with your kid that it's my neurotypical whisperer. Not necessarily neurotypical, but what do people mean when they ask this question? Because what I've been in trouble with in the past is that I answer the question that is asked, not the question that they thought they were asking, which I think gives me a little
you
bit
take it very
of
literally.
affinity for AI. Everyone talks about, I don't find it hard to prompt AI. I give the information I would have liked to know when people ask me to do things, pretty much. Mm-hmm. So it's that kind of, when they ask this, what do they mean? Because there's what I think, and then there's what. Yeah, so can it do a better job than what I do? No. But you know what it is great for? Like I said, being that either helping with the code, that was great, because it was really useful. I've got one that helps me. I've uploaded all my theory and practice, because one of the things I do is help fellow adults with ADHD and autism, especially young adults, life and career. I'm called Autie Auntie. No, that was like the next day. Awesome Auntie. Awesome. And that's in its infancy, and that only started because people kept asking me to help their kids while they're young adults. And so I have a little bot that I talk to about what I'm going to do, and I've told it all the things I want to always be mindful of. And so it helps remind me, hey, you said you wanted to do it this way. Are you in fact doing that? So it keeps me accountable to myself, which again is that brain. I don't have to remember everything I want to do. I can set up a system which will help me remember what I was going to do. I'm still judging the outputs. It's not, it's just that kind of useful friend on your shoulder.
You mentioned one other thing that I just want to delve into for a moment. You talked about people coming through and not necessarily developing the skills because people are using AI to do the stuff that they don't, they would have used junior staff for.
Yeah.
I'm seeing this in a lot of areas, and there's a concept that's starting to develop of a post-knowledge age. In 20 years, are we going to be in a situation where the skill sets that we take for granted have been devalued to the point where they're just not there anymore?
That is an interesting question. I have, in my opinion, I don't know if this answers your question, but it's something I probably want to say. As the world becomes more AI, I think we're going to crave human interaction more. And so some of the skill sets, it's not about knowledge. As a writer, I spent a long time developing my voice because I had to. As a junior writer, there will be, and I think other people have mentioned it, that pressure to produce more and more, quicker and quicker, because everyone else is doing it more and more and quicker. Now, I can use a tool like AI to produce my voice quicker because I've already, it's not replacing a fundamental skill. It's just getting that skill quicker. I grew up learning how to read maps, having to drive with maps. And I love right now that Google Maps will do it for me, right? Because it's a lot easier. But that doesn't mean I don't have the skill. It just means I'm choosing to use AI to replace it. My only concern as we use tomorrow my AI is the developing of the fundamental skills so that you have that deep understanding of what you are then tasking, be it another person or the AI, to do. And so knowledge is an interesting one as a scientist. I'll put that on a side, but yes, the world is evolving. And like I said, I'm teaching my kids through watching me. how to become a good tasker of these systems and how to evaluate outputs and all that critical thinking skills. But at the end of the day, when you use it to replace a skill, that's one thing. When you use it instead of ever learning the skill, then there's real dangers. I can see that's when you can't pick up hallucinations, when you end up not creating your own voice, you end up sounding like everyone else because you've literally never had to do it. And what that means for employability, I don't know, because I guess I'm less interested in the employability. I'm just more interested in the people having self-actualization as per Maslow's needs.
So I think we'll find out probably in the next 20 years what the outcome's going to be there then.
It is funny, though. I will put a plug in for my parents because, of course, they joined computing back in the days of punch cards. And they're just like, oh, I'm just going to sit this one out. I've been through all the time.
Yeah, I've done that before. No more of that.
It's like I've seen so many bubbles. I'm like, yeah, we're going to see in 20 years which tools actually are helpful and which tools are not. I personally I'm sticking with some of the fundamental ones, like experimenting with ChatGPT, because it's there. It has the most ability for me to actually understand what it's doing and why. When people rely too much on the people who create funnels beyond it, you're losing sight of even the instructions that are be giving to the AI. So you have less knowledge over why outputs might not be what you want.
So, Kathryn, if there's one piece of advice that you would want people to take away from today's conversation, what would it be?
You should play with it and look for ways, not just to save time, but to save brain space.
And I think that is the phrase of the day, brain space. I absolutely love that. Kathryn, where can people find you and these amazing projects that you're working on?
My website, cottagescience.org. The best place, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Cottage Science is one word.
Fantastic. Well, Kathryn, really interesting conversation today. Sounds like you're doing some great stuff, and I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap on another awesome guest episode for the Evolvepreneur AI Advantage show. Just before you go, if you like this episode, we would be very grateful for a 5-star review. Please also consider recommending the show to a friend or two. Make sure you subscribe for future episodes at aiadvantage.show right now. Until next time, I'm Richard Wray, and if you're an entrepreneur, get the AI advantage today.